My wife cheated on me with her Uber driver. I know how ridiculous that sounds. If someone had told me this story a year ago, I would have laughed in their face. An Uber driver. Seriously. Out of everyone on the planet. But that's exactly what happened. And the craziest part, I practically helped them meet. My wife, Melissa, and I had been married for 8 years. No kids. Not because we didn't want them. Life just kept getting in the way. We both worked long hours, promised each other we'd start trying next year, and somehow those next years kept slipping by. Still, I thought we were happy. We weren't the couple who posted fake smiling pictures online. We weren't overly romantic. We argued about dishes, forgot anniversaries, and occasionally ordered takeout 3 nights in a row. Normal married life. Or at least that's what I believed. Melissa worked downtown at a marketing agency. I worked as an accountant. Since I usually left for work before sunrise, we only saw each other in the evenings. About 6 months ago, her company stopped reimbursing parking fees because they moved into a new office building. Instead, they encouraged employees to use Uber. Melissa complained constantly. These drivers never know where they're going. They always cancel. They're always late. I heard those complaints almost every evening. Then one day, they suddenly stopped. Instead, she came home smiling. I finally found a good driver. I didn't think anything of it. Apparently, his name was Ryan. He actually remembers where I work. He knows the fastest routes. He always has water bottles. He keeps the car spotless. She talked about him the same way people recommend a good barber. I even joked about it. Sounds like you found your soulmate. She rolled her eyes. Don't be stupid. That should have been the end of it. Except Ryan somehow became part of our daily conversations. Oh, Ryan said traffic will be terrible tomorrow. Ryan recommended a new coffee place. Ryan thinks downtown construction won't finish until next year. It started feeling weird. Not suspicious. Just weird. One Saturday morning, I asked if she wanted to drive to the mall together. She shook her head. I'll just Uber. I laughed. We own 2 cars. I know. So, why? I don't feel like driving. Fair enough. An hour later, I looked outside while watering the flowers. A black Toyota Camry stopped in front of our house. Melissa got in. The driver smiled before she even opened the door. Not the fake customer service smile. The kind of smile you give someone you're genuinely happy to see. Again. I ignored it. Over the next month, she started taking Uber everywhere. The grocery store. The gym. Lunch with friends. Even appointments that were 10 minutes away. Our second car barely left the driveway. One evening, I asked the obvious question. Why are we paying insurance on a car you never use? She shrugged without looking up from her phone. I just prefer Uber. Why? I don't know. You've always loved driving. People change. The conversation ended there. Looking back, that was probably the first lie. Then I noticed something else. Her phone. Melissa had never cared if I borrowed it. If mine died, she'd hand me hers without hesitation. Now, she carried it everywhere. Bathroom. Laundry room. Kitchen. Even when taking the trash outside. One night I reached for it because mine was charging. She snatched it so quickly, she nearly dropped her wine glass. What are you doing? I was just checking the weather. You have your own phone. It's charging. Then wait. She immediately realized how harsh she sounded. Oh, I'm sorry. I've just got work stuff on here. I nodded. It made sense. At least, it did then. A few weeks later, our joint credit card statement arrived. Normally, I never paid attention to individual purchases. But one charge caught my eye. Uber. Then another. Then another. Then another. Almost every single day. Sometimes twice. Sometimes 3 times. The total for 1 month was over $1,100. I stared at the statement. Melissa. She looked over from the couch. Yeah. Did you really spend over $1,000 on Uber this month? She walked over, glanced at the paper for barely 2 seconds, then laughed. Oh. Work reimburses most of it. Then why isn't the reimbursement showing up? It probably hasn't processed yet. That answer sounded reasonable. Until the following month. Another $1,000. No reimbursement. When I brought it up again, she got angry. Why are you auditing every purchase I make? I'm not. I'm just asking. You don't trust me. I never said that. You don't have to. She stormed upstairs and slammed the bedroom door. I stood alone in the kitchen wondering how a simple question had somehow turned into an argument about trust. For the first time in 8 years, a tiny voice in the back of my mind whispered something I wasn't ready to hear. Something wasn't right. And I had no idea how bad things were about to become. The next morning, I kept replaying the previous evening in my head. Melissa hadn't looked at that Uber driver the way people looked at strangers. She looked comfortable, like they'd shared 100 conversations before. I tried convincing myself I was overthinking everything. Maybe she was just friendly. Maybe he was just a talkative driver. Maybe I was letting my imagination ruin a perfectly good marriage. But the maybes kept piling up. And eventually, they stopped making sense. A few days later, I came home early from work. Melissa was curled up on the couch with her phone. She was smiling. Not the polite smile she'd been giving me for months. A real one. The kind that reached her eyes. The second she heard my keys in the front door, her smile disappeared. She flipped the phone face down. Hey, she said quickly. Hey. You're home early. My meeting got canceled. Oh. That was all she said. Just, oh. A second later her phone buzzed. Without even looking at me, she grabbed it. Who's texting? I asked casually. Nobody. Nobody usually doesn't text. She laughed. It was just spam. Spam. Sure. She walked into the kitchen with the phone still in her hand. Things like that started happening almost every day. She never left her phone unattended anymore. She started taking it into the bathroom, into the shower. Even when we watched TV together, it stayed in her lap. Face down. Always face down. One Friday night, I reached for it absent-mindedly because mine was charging upstairs. Melissa snatched it away so fast you'd think I'd reached for a loaded gun. What are you doing? She snapped. I was just checking the weather. Use your own phone. Her tone caught me completely off guard. A second later, she smiled. I'm sorry, I've just got work stuff on here. Work stuff. At 11 o'clock on a Friday night. Right. The following week, she told me she had another late meeting. No problem, I said. I'll probably grab dinner with coworkers. Sounds good. She kissed my cheek before leaving. The kiss felt automatic. Like something she did out of habit instead of love. Around 10, that night I checked our joint bank account. A notification had just come through. $148.37. A restaurant charge. I recognized the place immediately. It wasn't anywhere near her office. And it definitely wasn't somewhere people held business meetings. When she got home after midnight, I asked casually, "So, how was dinner?" "It was okay." "Where'd you guys end up?" She answered without hesitation. "A completely different restaurant. One that didn't match the charge on our account." My stomach tightened. That was the first time I caught her in a lie. At least, the first lie I could prove. The next afternoon, my best friend Mark called me. "Hey man, what's up? I don't know if this matters." "What?" "I think I saw Melissa today." "Where?" "Downtown. She was supposed to be at work. Maybe she was on lunch." "Maybe." There was a pause. She wasn't alone. I felt my chest tighten. "Who was she with?" "No idea." "Tall guy. Dark hair." They were sitting outside a coffee shop. Honestly, they looked pretty comfortable together. I forced myself to laugh. "Probably a coworker." "Yeah, probably." But after hanging up, I couldn't stop thinking about it. That evening, Melissa ordered another Uber. I watched from our apartment window. 3 minutes later, a dark blue Toyota Camry pulled up. Same car. Same license plate. Same driver. Ryan. He didn't look at his phone when she walked outside. He was already watching the entrance. Waiting. Melissa opened the passenger door instead of sitting in the back. That struck me immediately. She climbed in. Ryan smiled the second he saw her. She smiled back. Not politely. Warmly. Comfortably. The car didn't move. 30 seconds. 40. Almost a full minute. They were talking. Laughing. Then the car finally pulled away. I stood there frozen. Maybe it still meant nothing. Maybe. But my instincts had stopped believing in coincidences. The next morning, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. Instead of driving to work, I opened Uber. I entered a destination across town. Then I waited. A few seconds later, the driver's profile appeared. Ryan. Same photo. Same Toyota Camry. Same 5-star rating. I almost canceled. Instead, I accepted the ride. When the car pulled up, Ryan greeted me with an easy smile. "Good morning." "Morning." He clearly had no idea who I was. The ride started in complete silence. Then something caught my eye. Resting beside the center console was a small ivory-colored hair tie. I froze. I'd bought that exact designer hair tie from Melissa only 3 weeks earlier. She'd told me she'd lost it. I stared at it for the rest of the ride. And for the first time, I stopped asking myself if my wife was lying. Now I only wanted to know how long she'd been doing it. Ryan was friendly. Too friendly. He chatted the entire ride like we'd known each other for years. "So, busy morning?" he asked. "Always. I know the feeling." He laughed. "I practically live in this car." I nodded politely, pretending not to care. Then I looked around the cabin again. Everything was spotless. The car smelled expensive. Leather seats. Fresh coffee. Phone chargers neatly organized for passengers. No wonder he had almost perfect ratings. People probably loved riding with him. But my attention kept drifting back to that hair tie. It looked identical to Melissa's. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe hundreds of women owned the same one. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. As we reached my destination, Ryan smiled. "Have a great day, man." "You too." I got out, but instead of walking into the office building, I stayed hidden behind the corner. Ryan drove away. I watched until the car disappeared. Then I called in sick. For the first time in years. Because work suddenly wasn't the most important thing in my life. That afternoon, I drove past Melissa's office. Her car wasn't there. Maybe she'd gone to a meeting. Maybe she'd parked somewhere else. I almost left. Then I noticed something across the street. A small cafe. Outside, sitting under a large umbrella, was Melissa, laughing. Across from her sat Ryan. Not another coworker. Not a group of people. Just the two of them. He wasn't wearing his Uber badge. She wasn't checking her watch. Neither looked like they were in a hurry. They looked comfortable. Like this wasn't their first coffee together. I stayed in my car. Watching. Trying to convince myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe she'd hired him for a private ride. Maybe they had become friends. Maybe. Then Ryan reached across the table and gently brushed something off her sleeve. Melissa smiled. She didn't pull away. Instead, she placed her hand over his for a second. Just 1 second. But that was enough. Enough to make my stomach drop. I drove home without confronting her. Not yet. I needed proof. Real proof. Not assumptions. Not feelings. Facts. That night she walked through the front door carrying takeout. I figured we'd have dinner together. She smiled as if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't watched her spend nearly an hour with another man. You didn't have that work meeting, I asked. What meeting? The one you mentioned yesterday. Oh. She blinked. It got canceled. Interesting. Because apparently the coffee date hadn't. Over dinner, I paid attention to every word she said. She talked about deadlines. Her boss. Traffic. A coworker named Lisa. Everything sounded perfectly rehearsed. Too rehearsed. Every answer came instantly. Like she'd practiced them. Then her phone buzzed again. She looked down. A tiny smile appeared. Gone in less than a second. But I saw it. You seem happy. What? You smiled. Oh. She shrugged. Just a funny meme. I simply nodded. Inside, I was exhausted. Every conversation felt like an interview. Every answer sounded fake. A week passed. Nothing obvious happened. Melissa acted almost perfect. She cooked dinner. Asked about my day. Even suggested we watch movies together. For a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined everything. Until Saturday morning. She came downstairs dressed nicer than usual. Going somewhere. Shopping. For 6 hours. She frowned. I might meet some friends. Which friends? She hesitated. Elisa. Again. Lisa. The mysterious coworker who apparently had unlimited free time. After she left, I made another decision I wasn't proud of. I opened our laptop. Melissa had once logged into her email on it. She'd forgotten to sign out. I knew I shouldn't. I knew it crossed a line. But I also knew something wasn't right. I searched for Ryan. Nothing. Uber. Nothing. Taxi. Nothing. She'd been careful. Very careful. Then I noticed another folder. Archived emails. Hundreds of them. Most were junk. Until one subject line caught my eye. Looking forward to Tuesday read. My pulse skyrocketed. I clicked it. Empty. The message had been deleted. Only the subject remained. No sender. No content. Just that heart. Someone had deliberately erased everything else. I closed the laptop immediately. My hands were shaking. Either Melissa was hiding an affair, or someone was going through an incredible amount of effort to make it look that way. Neither possibility made me feel any better. That evening, she came home carrying shopping bags. She smiled. "You should have come with me. I was busy." "Oh." She walked upstairs. A few seconds later, I heard her phone ring. She answered immediately. Her voice became quieter, almost a whisper. I couldn't make out the words. Only one sentence. "No, he doesn't know." Silence. Then a laugh. A real laugh. The one I hadn't heard, directed at me in months. I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs. For the first time since all of this began, I wasn't just suspicious anymore. I was terrified of discovering how deep the lies really went. That night I barely slept. I kept hearing those 4 words over and over in my head. No, he doesn't know. Maybe she wasn't talking about me. Maybe there was another explanation. But every instinct I had told me otherwise. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to accuse Melissa of anything. Not yet. If she was cheating, she'd deny it. If I confronted her without undeniable proof, she'd just become more careful. So I decided to do something I'd never imagined myself doing. I started paying attention. Really paying attention. For the next 2 weeks, I noticed patterns I'd somehow ignored before. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she left work at exactly 5:15. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she ordered an Uber. And almost every single time, Ryan accepted the ride. It couldn't be coincidence anymore. Out of hundreds of drivers in the city, she somehow kept getting the same one. Again. And again. And again. One Tuesday, I left work early. I parked half a block from Melissa's office. At 5:13, she walked outside. She didn't even open the Uber app while standing there. Almost as if she'd already known who was coming. 30 seconds later, Ryan's Camry pulled up. She didn't check the license plate. Didn't verify the driver's name. She simply opened the passenger door and got in. Passenger seat. Not the back. Again. The car drove away. I followed them, keeping 3 or 4 cars between us. My heart pounded so hard, I thought I might pass out. Instead of heading toward our apartment, Ryan drove across town. They stopped outside a quiet Italian restaurant. The kind couples went to. Not coworkers. Not friends grabbing coffee. Couples. I watched them walk inside together, laughing. Ryan held the restaurant door open for her. Melissa touched his arm as she walked past. Such a small gesture. Yet somehow it hurt more than anything else. I stayed in my car for almost an hour. Part of me wanted to storm inside. Part of me wanted to pretend I'd never seen any of it. Instead, I drove home. When Melissa finally returned that night, it was almost 10. She looked completely relaxed. Happy, even. "Sorry I'm late," she said. "Traffic was terrible." Traffic. That was her explanation. Not dinner. Not the restaurant. Traffic. I looked directly into her eyes. "You must have been starving." She blinked. "What? If traffic kept you that long?" "Oh." She laughed nervously. "We ordered pizza at the office." Another lie. She was getting so comfortable lying that she barely even thought about it anymore. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Mark called me again. "You busy?" Not really. I wasn't going to say anything. But I think I know the guy. My grip tightened around the phone. "What guy?" The one Melissa was having coffee with. My heart nearly stopped. How? My cousin drives for Uber. He knows him. I didn't say a word. His name really is Ryan. Apparently, he's kind of famous among the drivers. For what? Mark hesitated. Dating passengers. I closed my eyes. What do you mean? I mean exactly what it sounds like. They joke that he never has to use dating apps. He flirts with customers, gets their numbers, meets them after work. Heard he's broken up at least 2 marriages. Every word felt like another punch to the stomach. Are you sure? It's just gossip. But my cousin said Ryan's always bragging about married women. That evening, Melissa announced she was going away for the weekend. Lisa invited me to a spa. Just girls. I nodded. Sounds relaxing. It will be. She smiled. You don't mind, do you? No. Not anymore. Because I no longer believed a single word she said. The next morning she left with a small suitcase. I waited 15 minutes. Then I got in my own car. She didn't drive toward the highway. She didn't drive toward the spa resort. Instead, she stopped in the parking lot of a shopping center. Ryan was already there. Waiting. He climbed out of his Camry, carrying a duffel bag. Melissa walked straight into his arms. They hugged. Not like friends. Not like coworkers. Like two people who had desperately missed each other. I watched Ryan kiss her forehead. Then she kissed him. Slowly. Comfortably. Like this had happened dozens of times before. For a few seconds, I forgot how to breathe. The two of them loaded their bags into Ryan's car. Then they drove away together. I didn't follow. I couldn't. I sat alone in that parking lot for nearly 20 minutes, staring at the empty space where their car had been. Every memory of our marriage suddenly felt fake. Every anniversary. Every vacation. Every promise she'd ever made me. By the time I finally started my engine, I wasn't trying to save my marriage anymore. I was trying to figure out how long she'd been living a completely different life behind my back. And deep down, I had a feeling the worst discovery was still waiting for me. I didn't tell Melissa what I'd seen. Not that day. Not the next one, either. When she came home Sunday evening, she looked refreshed. Relaxed. She walked through the front door carrying a shopping bag. You would have loved the spa, she said with a smile. They had the best massages. Sounds nice. It really was. She leaned over and kissed my cheek. For the first time in our marriage, I had to stop myself from pulling away. Because all I could think about was watching her kiss another man less than 48 hours earlier. She unpacked while casually talking about facial treatments, hot tubs, and expensive candles. It would have been a convincing story if I hadn't watched her spend the weekend leaving town with Ryan. The lies came effortlessly, almost professionally. That hurt more than the affair itself. Monday morning, I called a divorce attorney. I didn't schedule anything. I just wanted information. The receptionist transferred me to one of the lawyers. What can I help you with? I think my wife is cheating. There was a brief silence. I hear that sentence every day, he replied calmly. The question is whether you can prove it. I've seen them together. Do you have photos? No. Messages? No. He sighed. Then don't confront her yet. Gather evidence. Once she realizes she's been caught, she'll erase everything. His words stayed with me all day. Gather evidence. That evening, I bought 2 small GPS trackers online. One for Melissa's car. One, just in case. I hated myself for doing it. I hated what my marriage had turned me into. A man hiding gadgets in parking lots instead of trusting his wife. The trackers arrived 2 days later. Installing the first one took less than 30 seconds. Melissa never noticed. The second stayed in my desk drawer. I hoped I'd never need it. Over the next week, the location history painted a picture that was impossible to ignore. Melissa wasn't working late. She wasn't meeting Lisa. She wasn't going shopping. She visited the same places over and over. A coffee shop, a small park, a hotel on the edge of downtown, then another restaurant, then Ryan's apartment building. She stayed there for nearly 4 hours one Thursday evening. 4 hours. When she got home, she complained about how exhausting work had been. One night, she noticed I'd become quieter. "Is everything okay?" "I'm just tired. You've seemed distant lately." I almost laughed. Distant? She was asking me why I was distant. "I've had a lot on my mind. You should talk to me." The irony was unbelievable. The following Friday, Mark invited me out for a beer. "You look terrible." "I feel terrible. You gonna tell me what's going on?" I stared into my glass. "I know she's cheating." He didn't look surprised. "You caught her." "I saw enough." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." Mark thought for a moment. "My cousin heard something else." I looked up. "What?" "Ryan's been telling people he's almost got her convinced to leave her husband." My stomach dropped. "He actually said that?" "Yeah. Apparently, she's been promising him it'll happen soon." I couldn't even respond. The woman I'd planned my future with was apparently planning one with someone else. That weekend, Melissa was unusually affectionate. She suggested we go out for dinner, held my hand across the table, even talked about taking a vacation together. It was surreal. She could spend Friday with another man, and Saturday planning a romantic getaway with me. I finally understood something. She wasn't confused. She wasn't trapped. She wasn't unhappy. She was simply living 2 separate lives. 3 nights later, everything changed. Melissa said she needed to work late again. I simply nodded. "No problem." She smiled. "I won't be too long." As soon as she left, I checked the GPS. Instead of driving toward her office, she headed downtown, then stopped. 5 minutes later, Ryan's Camry arrived at the exact same location. Neither vehicle moved. 10 minutes. 15. 20. I grabbed my keys. For some reason, my gut told me this was different. This wasn't another dinner. This wasn't another coffee. Whatever was happening tonight, it was the moment I'd been getting closer to for weeks. And I had no idea that before the night was over, my entire marriage would end in the back seat of a taxi. My hands were shaking as I drove toward the GPS location. Every traffic light felt longer than usual. Every red light gave me another chance to turn around, to go home, to pretend none of this was happening. But I couldn't. I needed the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The tracker led me to a quiet street behind a row of office buildings. There wasn't much there. Just a few parked cars, a convenience store, and one familiar dark blue Toyota Camry. Ryan's car. Its engine was off. The windows were fogged up just enough that I couldn't immediately see inside. I parked across the street. For a full minute, I simply stared. My heart was pounding so hard, I could hear it in my ears. Maybe they were just talking. Maybe I was still wrong. I crossed the street, one slow step at a time. As I got closer, I could finally see through the windshield. Melissa was sitting in the passenger seat. Ryan's hand was resting on hers. They were smiling, talking quietly. Then, he leaned toward her. She met him halfway. They kissed. Not a quick goodbye. Not something impulsive. It was the kind of kiss shared by two people who'd done it many times before. That was all I needed to see. I knocked once on the driver's window. 3 sharp taps. Ryan jumped so hard, he hit his elbow on the steering wheel. Melissa turned toward the window. The color drained from her face. For a second, no one moved. Then Ryan unlocked the doors. I opened the passenger door. Melissa immediately stepped out. Please. Her voice was barely above a whisper. This isn't what it looks like. I almost laughed. I've heard that line in movies. I never thought you'd actually say it. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. Ryan climbed out of the driver's seat. Look, man. I raised my hand. I'm not talking to you. He wisely stayed quiet. Melissa grabbed my arm. It only happened recently. A lie. I'd watched it happen for weeks. You went to the spa with him. She froze. You followed me. So the spa was real. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I can explain. No. You can lie. That's what you've been doing. Her expression changed instantly. The panic disappeared. The anger arrived. So this is my fault now. I stared at her. My fault. You've been spying on me. You tracked my car. You invaded my privacy. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So we're skipping the part where you're cheating. You drove me to this. There it is. The blame. Exactly what I'd expected. If you'd paid more attention to me. If you weren't always working. If you actually listened. Every sentence started with you. Not once did she say, I'm sorry. Ryan finally spoke. Melissa. She snapped toward him. Stay out of this. Then she turned back to me. We were going to tell you. When? She hesitated. Soon. After you moved in with him. Silence. That answered everything. I reached into my pocket, took off my wedding ring, and placed it in her hand. I don't want it anymore. She looked down at it, then back at me. You're seriously throwing away 12 years. No. I said quietly. You already did. I walked back toward my car. Behind me, I heard her yelling. Coward. You never fought for us. I deserve to be happy. I didn't turn around. Then came the sentence that erased every remaining feeling I had for her. You'll regret divorcing me. I stopped for just a second. Without looking back, I answered. No. I'll regret marrying you. Then I got into my car and drove away. The next morning, I was sitting in my lawyer's office. He slid the divorce papers across the desk. Are you sure? I thought about the last 12 years. The vacations. The birthdays. The promises. The lies. Then I signed my name. I'm sure. Melissa called 23 times that day. I answered none of them. She sent dozens of texts. Some apologized. Some blamed me. Some begged for another chance. Others said Ryan meant nothing. Then another message claimed Ryan meant everything. She couldn't even keep her own story straight. I blocked her number. Then every social media account. For the first time in months. The silence felt peaceful. A month later, I heard through mutual friends that Ryan had left her. Apparently, once the excitement of the affair disappeared. So did he. He'd started driving another regular passenger. Melissa tried contacting me again through email. She wrote that she'd made the biggest mistake of her life, that she'd been manipulated, that she wanted to fix our marriage. I never replied. Some things don't deserve a response. 6 months later, our divorce was finalized. I walked out of the courthouse feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because losing my marriage made me happy, but because I no longer had to wonder whether I was being lied to. The wondering had been worse than the truth. Looking back now, I don't think Ryan stole my wife. He simply revealed the person she had always been. And if there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's simple. When someone lies to you once, pay attention. When they lie to you every day, believe the lies. Because eventually, they'll tell you exactly who they are.